Hi, today is January 16, 2022. Our topic of conversation today is centered around the topic of long-term care. Now, you may be wondering, what is this long-term care? Well, let me explain. It is the services that one may need as we get older and cannot take 100% care of ourselves. We may need an aide to come into the home and help us, or some people might move into assisted living community where they have their own apartment and they get meals prepared and housekeeping and other services. Or it might even include adult daycare and also includes nursing home. So long-term care takes place in 4 different areas: at home, in assisted living, at adult daycare, and a nursing home. What are the probability of one needing such care? Well, I'll share that with you. 70% of people over the age of 65 will need long-term care at some point. Some might need it for a very short period of time, while others might need it for years, some for many years. But the statistics indicate that the average long-term care claim for males is 3 years, and the average for females is 4.2 years. We find that most Americans are not planning for this, and probably it's either because they've never thought about it, they haven't had the personal experience of having a family member that needed long-term care, or they just think it will not happen to them. And for some people, it will not happen. For that 1 out of 3 who don't need long-term care, they're spared. So let me share my personal story with you. I had already moved down to Florida from New York, and my mom needed some help. And it was a lot easier to just move her down closer to me, and that's what I did. So I moved her to Florida, and I found her in an assisted living community, which was not too far for me to go and visit and watch over things. But at that time, the light bulb went off in my head, and I said, gee, if this could happen to my mom, it could possibly happen to me as well. So I started to plan for myself, and I purchased a long-term care insurance policy. And because I was only 40 years old at the time, I got all the bells and whistles added to my policy, because the younger one is, when they purchase a policy, the lower the premiums. And if the premium is low, you can add in a lot more bells and whistles to your policy. Now, let me share with you that my goal is to never ever use that policy. I pay those annual premiums, and yes, I could use that money for something else a whole lot more fun, like a vacation. But it gives me peace of mind to know that if the time comes, when the time comes, if I need long-term care, I have it in place. I have a solution that's going to pay for the expensive costs of long-term care. So I would rather be spending money on something that I hope to never, ever, ever need to use. But I know realistically, the statistics indicate that the chances are much greater that I will need to use it rather than not use it. So what is the cost of long-term care when you don't have a plan in place, when you're just exposing yourself to that risk at 100% of the cost? Of course, costs vary by where in this country you live. Some areas are more expensive than others, of course. But where I am located in Southeast Florida, I could share with you some average costs of long-term care. If you need an aide to come into your home to help you with the activities of daily living, which includes bathing, eating, dressing, toileting, continence, getting in and out of a chair, or cognitive impairment, that will cost you roughly $25 per hour. If you need help for 4 hours, that's $100. If you need help for 8 hours a day, well, that's $200. What if you decide that the best solution for you is to go into an assisted living community where you have your own apartment and you choose the layout and the number of bedrooms that you have, and you pay for that accordingly? But on average, assisted living communities, again, on average, is roughly $5,000. And I've seen some that are more. I've seen some that are $6,000 and $7,000. And that's just for the base rent of living there. Then they have what's called levels of care, which depending upon how much care you will be needing, they tack on additional fees on top of your base rent. If you need to go into a nursing home, that runs roughly between $8,000 to $10,000 a month in my general vicinity. Again, it depends on where you are in this country, but those costs are very high, aren't they? I mean, how do you plan for that? Do you decide to pass the risk along to an insurance company and purchase a long-term care insurance policy? Or do you bear the risk yourself? And then you have to think about, well, how will you pay for that when you're paying for 100% of the cost? Will it come out of your savings account? Will it come out of your retirement nest egg? Will it come out of a brokerage account? How will you pay for it? Because as we discussed, the probability of needing long-term care is very high. And most people think of long-term care as something that happens to older people. And while that might be true to some extent, I'll have you know that 40% of people that are receiving long-term care right now are actually younger than 65. And you might be wondering, but why? How come? Well, think of it this way. Somebody could get into a horrible motorcycle accident, a horrible car accident. Things happen that we do not expect. And that's what leads to people living in nursing homes that need long-term care. So it is all about planning for your future. And I'll share another story with you. My father's wife was receiving long-term care in her home for many, many, many years. And at one point I asked her, I said, why didn't you just buy long-term care insurance? And she said to me, well, I never thought I would need it. And it's one of those things that you think that you might never need, but what if you do? What if your spouse needs it? Will you be able to take care of your spouse? Or will you have to call in help? And caregiver stress is a big factor, but we won't talk about that today. So to summarize, long-term care is the kind of help that we may need down the road in our future when we can no longer take care of ourselves 100%. Long-term care takes place in your home, in assisted living, in adult daycare, and in a nursing home. And the longer you wait to purchase a policy, the more expensive it will be, because it's not only based on your age, but more importantly, it's based on your health. And really the only way to qualify for a long-term care policy is with your health. Having said that, there are some people who cannot qualify because of their poor health. So none of us knows what tomorrow brings. If you haven't put a plan in place, you may want to consider doing that, and preferably before you turn 1 year older, because again, the longer you wait, the older you are when you apply, the more expensive it will be. So if you have any questions about long-term care, feel free to reach out to me at 561-302-5760. I am more than happy to help, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.